Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're continuing on our pandemic projects. Today we're going to work on an Abu Garcia. It's a Roxani, R-O-X-A-N-I. It's a 7.1 to 1 retrieve. It pulls in 29 inches of line per turn, and it's got 11 ball bearings in it. And this one belongs to Josh. Josh tells me this reel got sanded, and it's not as smooth as it was. That's all the information that he gave me. I told him I'd try to help him out with it. He started it, and we're missing a side plate screw here, but I thought we would take it apart. If nothing else, we're going to learn about this reel. You'll see how it's made. If you have one of them, you'll learn how to service it, and we'll get started. And I like to get started by thanking our first responders, our essential personnel, law enforcement, EMTs, hospital and medical workers, whether it's in a long-term care facility or on the front lines of a COVID ward. We thank you for everything it is that you're doing during the pandemic. Really do appreciate it. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to start by taking off the exterior pieces. The first one is that little ring that holds that cap nut from turning. Next up then would be the cap nut. It's a 10mm nut. So if you're going to do this fishing reel, make sure you have your 10mm wrench out. Go ahead and take that off. So Josh is one of our younger reelers, but the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter what your age is. If you have an interest in reel repair, it's certainly something that you can do. And my videos are here to help you along the way if you're interested in doing that. So I've just removed that. I'm going to remove the star adjuster now. There's a little click mechanism going in there, so we want to make sure we can identify that on the way out. So I take the adjuster off. Here's your click. Now notice there's a flat side is up on this. Usually there's an open side. Yep, there's an open side here. So that open side goes down. I like to put it right back into there and nest it the way it was. Then we have two tension washers. These tension washers provide the variability on the adjuster. They're not flat washers. They are concave, and depending on how you set them up, you can get more or less variability in your adjustment cycle. There's a little switch on the back here that's going to enable us to take this side plate off, so let's go ahead and do that. So I wear this protective glove, and unfortunately sometimes this protective glove just gets in the way of efficiently working on this thing, but most of the time we're all right. There we go. This is a mag drive reel. You can tell that in the back, and it has a ball bearing back here. Now I'm not seeing any evidence of sand there, so interesting. We'll see. I think Josh may have cleaned it up. He's just noticing that it's not going as smooth as it was, so we're going to leave it at that. Same thing here. We've got another ball bearing, so I don't know if I'm hearing bearing noises. I am hearing that it's not a quiet reel. Sometimes when you get sand, you will get sand in the bearings as well. I'm not sure if there's a bearing behind it. There's a bearing in that case. So we're going to put everything we take off in the parts tray. And as I previously mentioned, I do wear a glove on my hand to keep the dirts and oils off of there. All right, when we go to take this off, we have 3 screws normally. We're missing one here. And we have one in the back here. So you have to make sure that you take all of the pieces off, otherwise that case will not come off. I'm going to start with the one in the back. And this one in the back's got a little clip here, I'm noticing. Not quite sure what that clip is going to do, so it's probably just to hold the screw in. So be aware of that as you take this off. I'm just going to see what we can get out of there right now. Yeah, that's nothing more than the seat for the screw. So knowing that now, best thing to do is just put the screw back into that seat so you don't lose it. Like we lost the other screw here. We've got one up top here. Now that one has a different head to it. I won't miss knowing where that other screw came from because I put it in the foot. We have a short screw there. And we have a different head size on this screw. So we need to pay attention when we're doing this as to which one goes where. That's a bigger one. And I'm thinking that based on what I'm seeing here, that small screw is probably the same size for the top. Now, most of the time I recommend going and getting a schematic. I probably should have done that for this exercise because of the missing screw. And I think what I would like to find out before I finish everything off, I will do that. I will go back to the schematic and I'll find out, is that screw this one size or is it the size of the other one over here before I tighten down that last one. This should allow us to remove the case now, and it does. There's a bearing in here. There's 11 bearings, so there are going to be bearings everywhere, right? And then we have our anti-reverse. And generally speaking, you don't lubricate an anti-reverse gear, or bushing, or bearing, or whatever they, clutch, or whatever they want to call them. They have all different names for them. I do not, as a rule, oil those. We're dry here, but other than being dry, I'm not seeing anything really particularly difficult in this reel. Let's make these springs, let's take them off right away, because if they pop, you're probably going to be looking for a ballpoint pen somewhere to trim one down and replace it. This is the collar for the anti-reverse. It's got some stuff on it there, and it's also got the piece for the bearing goes on the top end of that. So please make sure you identify that. Inside you can see the big gear and the little gear, and you can understand why the one is going to travel 7 to 1 in terms of a return. It's a big gear, a little. This one's going to go around once, that one's going to go around 7.1 times. Alright, we should be able to pull that whole stack off now. And we can pull the yoke and the... So this is a good one. I got a question the other day, and I encourage questions. If you have a question, put it into your... in the comment section. I'll try and answer it, whether it's for this reel or a different reel. I got a question: should my pinion gear be so loose? And the answer is yes. It's the spool that's holding that pinion gear in between the spool and the main gear here. So if you have it loose, not to worry. You should only worry about that if it's loosened over the course of the after the reinstall. All right, make sure you realize which side goes where. So if you're confused by this, that the part with the slot in it is going to be for the spool. There's a ramp on this plastic piece. It's maybe hard to see. Maybe from this side we can see it. There's a ramp. That goes to the back so that the trip lever, the jack that's going to pull this in, is going to pull it forward this way. And that little piece is right here. So when you go to set your button, I don't think we can pop anything at this point, but that will move the spool gear up and down. So pay attention as how that sets. All right, let's just check the main gear. Everything on this one is checking out fine. So here's our click ratchet and our shim washer. Go ahead and do that. And you want to make sure, I just by habit did that, but you want to make sure that as you do that, that you're intersecting with the teeth. And this is the trip mechanism as it comes in, so it is facing the right way. If you got confused and you put it the other way, well, it just wouldn't intersect, right? You wouldn't have a trip. And that's a common question that I get all the time is, my reel doesn't trip. I took it apart and now my reel doesn't trip. Well, that would be a reason for it. Let's just turn this to push this back up. Everything looks fine here so far. I'm not quite sure what's causing the issue there. It sounds like a dryness issue, but it could be other things. Because I know we want to work on this, I'm going to take a hard brush. I'm going to make sure we clear the whole channel here. Check the teeth. You want to make sure that the teeth are all uniform, that they're not dent, cracked, or chipped, or broken in any regard. I'm going to go ahead and grease this. I'm going to use fishing reel grease. I recommend only using fishing reel grease on fishing reels. I've seen a lot of things come in with grease, and a lot of things came in broken because of the grease. They sometimes use a grease that's too thick and it bogs down the real performance. They sometimes use a grease that's too thin. I've seen folks use Vaseline as a grease. Well, you can, because it is a petroleum product, but it'll evaporate quickly, dry up the reel, and then you'll have poor performance from that reel. All right, I'm just putting the grease onto our pinion gear assembly. I'm going to go put that back on. There's 2 studs that rides over. It sits in the cavity inside the plate here. Now we can put our main gear on after we put our shim washer on. And you want to make sure that it intersects with your gear. These are Carbon-Tex washers, so nothing's required on Carbon-Tex washers. If you do any kind of greasing on that, make sure you wipe it down and only leave a thin coat on there. There's only 2 metal washers and a cap washer. So the first one up is the keyed washer, the second washer. Then the eared washer goes in the middle, and it fits in the slots of the main gear. Then we have our last of the washers, and this one. And then we know from our disassembly of this, the next piece up then is the sleeve for the anti-reverse. And then we have that little washer that protects the bearing. So that's the inside of your reel, with the exception of the 2 springs that go on the posts for the yoke. These springs provide the tension when this pushes out to release from the spool to allow the free spool. This provides the tension for the return when your gear drives that other click ratchet back. So those go on there. Now we can just take this piece and reinstall the side cap. So we've checked all of this out. It looks right, Josh, and I'm not sure what your noise is. We've oiled everything up here. That may have been a little bit, it kind of felt that way in this process. And we've done the best we can to make sure that there's no damage on any of these pieces or parts. And now we're just going to go ahead and put this back in to reinstall. Just set that cover over, drop it down in. And we know we have the screw for the front and the back. We don't know we have the screw for the side. So we're going to take the one first. We're going to place that in the back here. We've got the small one that goes up top here by the line guide. I'm going to tighten that one down. Then we're going to come over and service the line guide. So to service the line guide, you want to remove the cap. And you need to be careful with these caps. They're plastic. And interestingly enough, for whatever reason, when they crack, it's always difficult to find a replacement. This one isn't terrible because it's got a flat top, but sometimes you'll have a Shimano. And the Shimano have these little, well, they look like castles. They have little teeth on them, and they crack easily. I just put a drop of grease in there. When I was testing before, it was riding fine. You can remove the pawl and check the teeth on the pawl. I don't think that's the issue with this performance. We're also going to put some grease onto the worm gear. We'll give that a drive, and it's still noisy. It is still noisy. I'm not sure what's causing the noise here, but there is a noise in this reel. So I'm gonna pull that pawl and just see. Didn't appear to be an issue, but if this did get sanded, there's a chance that there's sand in that pawl. So let's go do this again. This is the pawl. And I'm not seeing or feeling anything with that. Let's go ahead and do it without the pawl. yeah, we still got a noise, and I'm not going to say that that's normal or not. I don't know this reel, but I see what he's saying about the noise being there. All right, and then we can just go ahead and put that cap back on. Now we also haven't tightened down the rest of the case here, but that shouldn't have that much of a dramatic effect on it at this point. We do have the one more screw. We'll go ahead and put that in. Notice that there's an offset. That offset goes to the back. The front end of this is for, if you put that collar in the other way, it's going to rub up against the gear. So it sits like that in the indentation. And we'll go ahead and put this back in now. So Josh, I'm a little bit stumped as to exactly what might be causing it. It does seem like a little bit of gear wear or something at this point. It's got a burring sound to it, actually. And if you like, you can probably try to replace the bearings on this. Well, some of it has to do with the lost screw too. There's no question about that, because as I pull the case closer, it's working a little bit better. Okay, we've oiled up the bearings on the spool, so we can go ahead and put the spool back in. Put a little bit of grease onto the tag end of the spool. We've got our case. Just want to set it by engaging the lock there. Here's our assembly, turned right side up now. We have the two little trim washers. Remember we said that the open side was down. We have our adjuster. And what I'm going to do after we finish this video, because you've seen how to take this apart now and tune it up. If there's an issue, the issues would be with the pieces and parts. Well, this has quieted it down tremendously, so maybe it was just oil. It's quite possible. Okay, we have our little tension washer next. We have our handle. Our 10mm nut cap. And you need to make sure when you're doing this that you get this on without cross stripping it. And that's what I'm kind of having a little bit of an issue with here. I'm tightening by hand. You try to tighten with your wrench only. You risk cross stripping it. All right. And then we'll put our. If you keep this flat or perpendicular to that hole, generally your tie down clip will match up with the hole as it's done here. We have our tie down screw. It's always a balancing act for me. And I'm going to go to the schematic. I'm going to find out what that screw is there. But let's see what we got. I don't know if I hold that. Yeah, we have a nice spin. There's no noise in that spool. We have it clicking, so we've set that mechanism right. And we still have a little bit of noise in there. So if it was sanded, I think that might be a little bit of it. There might be something sitting in one of those bearings that may need to be replaced. Otherwise, it's a nice reel. 11-ball bearings, pretty smooth as it is right now. But if there is an issue, it would be in one of the bearings at this point. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If you have a question, please leave it in the comments section. And again, I'll thank all of our first responders. If you have a reel that needs to be serviced, contact me by the email on the business card that follows, and I'll provide you with that service information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.